Previously on agentpalmer.com, Palmer's Trek, The Next Generation, the intersection of new tech and solid standards on display in Collision of Power. And if you still haven't listened to King Triumph's music, get grooving. This is the Palmer Files, episode 131, featuring the return of my friend and master to my Padawan in all things Star Trek, Edward O'Hare. He's back again to discuss my continuing journey, this time through all things Star Trek, The Next Generation. Are you ready? Let's boldly go! Palmer's Trek, the final frontier. These are my voyages on a continuing mission to explore Star Trek, to seek out television series and movies, to boldly go where many fans have gone before. Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stersick, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 131st episode is Edward O'Hare, who's back to talk Star Trek again, this time of the Next Generation variety. That's right, 7 seasons of television and 4 movies, Generation, First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis, plus what we agree and disagree on, a few standout episodes for discussion, Ed gets on a soapbox about Jonathan Frakes, the poor luck of Geordi LaForge, and so much more. But before we get there, remember that if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you can find all related ways to contact my guest, Ed, and myself in the show notes. There you can find a link to Ed's Fiverr where he's available for voiceover work, and I suggest if you're looking for voiceover, you give him some work. The man's talented, and I don't say that just because he's my friend. We've also worked together on some stuff beyond this podcast. Don't forget you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, engage! Ed, I watched all of Star Trek, The Next Generation, as well as the 4 movies. It's a lot. It's 7 full seasons, and it took me a while. I'll admit.
So we're diving right into this.
Yeah, we're diving in.
Okay, so they okay, all right. Well, I'm going to give you a little bit more editing work, and just explain to you that right now, I'm doing this to distract myself from the New York Yankees, and that I'm doing this also delaying my viewing of Beverly Hills Cop 4.
I'm just gonna start over then, because
I just want you to know how important this is right now.
Okay.
And the time that I'm making for you.
Yeah, but okay, so I think it is also important to note that for those listeners who listened to the original episode where we talked about the original, the OG franchise with the series, the animated, and the movies, you and I spoke more regularly about my watch through of those than we did of Next Gen to a very large extent. I called you when there was like a 2-parter or something, but for the most part, like occasionally, for the OG series, you'd be like, "Hey, did you get to this episode yet?" We didn't do that as much with Next Gen.
I think because I haven't rewatched Next Gen as much as I have the original series, and also I think we probably talked about it about as much. Just the difference is there's more than twice as many episodes.
Yep.
And also you had a long lag time.
I took like
finishing
2
up
breaks.
those last couple seasons.
Yeah, I did. I needed a breather, and I not to spoil anything, but it feels like I'll probably need a breather going forward. With 2 more 7. I think I was trying to think about this. I introduced Steph to The West Wing and Gilmore Girls, which I only bring up because those are also both 7 seasons, and I'm pretty sure we took them, like it took us a while. Like I think every 7 or more series thing has a bit of a okay. Maybe I need a break from this before I finish it.
Well, also you got to remember, especially and this is something that's going to come up in our discussion. Pre-Sopranos, pre the HBO revolution, so 60s through the 90s, you had 26 episode seasons.
Yeah.
That were only meant to be viewed once a week. So they're not really built for binging. If you watch 3 or 4 more, depending on the type of show, they can blend together, and they could start to feel repetitive.
I very much tried to keep it on average one a day. When I was at before, if you discount the break, I was doing 1.1. Occasionally I do 2. And maybe on the oddball, I'd miss a couple days and I'd do 3 to catch up. But for the most part, it was fairly daily viewing, which felt important for that reason. Because they do kind of, it's unlike the OG series, it's much more connected, but it's not connected in a way something in 2020 would be connected.
No, it's not. It's not serial. It's very much, it's a procedural where each... that's the thing that frustrates me with a lot of shows, not just the modern Trek shows, but a lot of TV shows, period, that have gone to the, hyper serialized format where every season we've got to tell one big long story, where I feel like you're taking 6 to 8 to 10 episodes to solve a problem that Picard and company would have figured out in 45 minutes.
That's fair. That's fair. I will tell you, this was a journey in that I like Next Gen. I don't love Next Gen. And I want to go a step further and say the movies grew on me. But I don't know that I would have had the same appreciation for the movies had I watched them in a vacuum without the 7 seasons prior.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I almost want to say I like the movies better than I like the Next Gen cinematic stuff probably a little bit more than the series.
Well, also you got to remember they're on a syndicated TV budget, so there's certain things. It's very similar to the type of stuff that BBC was doing with Doctor Who, although it was definitely geared towards a different demographic. And to that extent, and I don't know much about Doctor Who, but I will say the one weird thing about watching those last 4 movies, to skip to the end real quick, is they feel like an extension of the television show from the 90s, and they don't feel like they if I had watched this in a vacuum and you had been like, what year did the last movie come out? I would have been like 90 something. It doesn't feel like 2002. Okay. It's just, and I think all of the movies, and maybe to a greater extent than the OG movies, they do fan service without fan service. I don't know, if that resonates. They hit all the beats for the fans without pandering, I guess. Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's a nice little treat or a nugget for someone who's a diehard, but it's not going to distract a newbie, or take them out of it.
Especially as someone who is watching the movies before he's watched Deep Space Nine, and I know. I know there was an overlap.
Oh yeah, you don't know anything about that tough little ship.
No. I also don't know why. Somebody next to me on the couch was squeeing when Janeway showed up, and I don't know how they got Worf back from Deep Space Nine. I don't even know why he was there in the first place. Right? But that's fine. I kind of expect that. Especially going forward, there's going to be some overlaps, but I'll never get through any of these series if I watch them as they're supposed to be. But I will say, I don't think those first 2 seasons are nearly as bad as you led them to be.
The thing that I found really puzzling about your review of the Next Generation series.
Yep.
It felt like you got this thing in your head when Yar dies at the end of season 1 that this is the type of show where we kill people off and there's high stakes. And I don't think that's fair because it was never going to be that kind of show. It's meant to be an 80s version of the original series.
But it doesn't feel like an 80s version of the original. Like I think that they spent so much time in character development. They lost some of the
no, it's the exact opposite. The reason those first 2 seasons don't work is because they're so caught up with clever plots and sci-fi tropes that you don't care about the characters. And then in the 3rd season, when Michael Piller comes in and says, no, we're going to focus on characters, and each character is going to have at least 1 or 2 episodes a season that's about them, that's when people started to get attached to it and the series took off.
Although, if that's true, then why were they like, all right, we're gonna give Beverly some interesting like love story stuff. We're gonna give Riker some on again, off again with Troy. Picard's gonna have a lot of stuff happen. Data's gonna have a lot of stuff happen, and Geordi's gonna get shit on for the rest of the entire series. Like, how? Why? Because, and I'm sure I mentioned it in my review, because, like, it's so obvious. Like, every episode focused on Geordi is like, how can we crush this man? Like, he's so happy, and he's so optimistic, and he's so aware of his abilities. How can we crush him? Why?
Well, it's about bringing him back down to earth. That even that even the smartest, most dedicated, brilliant engineers are not perfect, and think about how those types of storylines. I feel like the movie Her just takes that storyline right out of where he falls in love with the hologram.
Yep, that's fair.
And
the
way they were able to build in recurring characters. Remember, you only got Harry Mudd in 2 episodes. But you got Barkley and Q running all the way through those shows.
Okay, fine. Let's talk about it then. I will admit, and we talked about this on the phone a few times.
Yeah.
It's not until Q's like 4th appearance that I'm like, all right, I kind of like Q now. I thought Q was annoying. Barkley I loved from the moment he started.
Yeah.
He was, for me, he was Next Gen's Harvey Mudd. But like Q... I was just kind of like, it seems too convenient. That was it,
Well, it's because I feel like the original series, like, one of the types of episodes, they had about 5 different versions of, we run into an alien that's so evolved and tells us that you're not ready to understand us and you're going to give it time. And Q was just an extrapolation of that. And to the point where it's like, you're not ready and I'm going to have fun proving that to you.
I think it was that kind of like childlike benevolence that like I didn't like until like he made a true connection, like further down.
You just don't like fun.
Yeah, no, apparently I just don't like fun. No, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, this is the other thing. And I wanted to ask you this question. I watched, with my limited knowledge going in, I got the full force of the OG stuff. And then I watched The Next Generation. And I think in my headcanon, I still prefer the OG stuff. And I don't know if that's... I don't know if that's just because that's the way I watched it, so everything's going to be compared to it, as opposed to going back and discovering what the original was, or if it's just a product of like, I'm sure there's people out there that try to go back and watch that stuff. Look, it's 60s television. Just like I'm sure there's people that have discovered Star Trek since Next Gen that go back and go like, oh, this is 90s television. Like, it's different. The storytelling, the shooting, it's all different. But I don't know. It's just, I think it, and I don't know. I feel like maybe like you, had I come to it first, it might have been a different thing.
Well, it is interesting because I had a whole plan for you that you didn't want to do, which would have involved you jumping around show to show.
It would have felt like I was at least now I've got the original series stuff done and next gen stuff done. Like the way you had it, I would have been in a tunnel and there's a light, but it's still a pinhole. Okay. There's no and I at the moment, and I say this knowing full well that I have 18 seasons of television ahead of me before I get to any more movies, that it does feel like I've accomplished something, which is the reason I didn't go with your thing.
There you go. Okay. You know, so that's perfectly fine. Yeah. But also it's the kind of thing where, I grew up Next Generation was airing. And that was what I first
experienced. Yeah.
And so the thing that I think works about the series is it is still anthology. You don't have to watch those episodes as they air. You can watch them in a random order and get
for the most part
the experience.
Yeah, because I will say even during my extended breaks, when I came back, I wasn't lost. Which I guess is kind of more to that point, right? Like you can take, because I think I took a month off at one point, and it was just like, oh, well, I just put one on and this feels comfortable.
The one exception to that, I think, and really like the big turning point for the series, and and this is true of all three of the 90s shows, and to a lesser extent Enterprise. But season 3 is when things start to gel.
Okay.
And then season 4, there's a big change and a turning point that really kicks the series into high gear. And for the Next Generation, that's the Best of Both Worlds, parts 1 and 2.
Yeah, that was the weird part.
And I would say you could see a huge shift before and after that episode.
There's that moment when you start getting two-parters that aren't season-ending cliffhangers.
Yes.
Where I have to give the show credit for they took some chances because you knew you couldn't do it in one episode. So let's just go with it. And I know that the 90s that was part of 90s television. It wasn't just Star Trek. I get that. Yeah. But they took some mighty big swings in the middle of some of those seasons.
Sure.
But I think in syndication, I think I'd still rather watch the OG, but I wouldn't turn off a Next Gen episode if it came on. I think that's where I'm at right now.
Okay.
Aside from needing a break, which I wouldn't have expected either, was there anything else that surprised you for my series?
Well, I think to me, the way you responded to certain episodes, and I could say I have a document here that I've put together for friends who are interested in dipping their toes in Star Trek. And of course, I think I've sent this to you, but it's way too detailed for any sane person. Okay. But I do have let's see, if you count the two-parters as 5 episodes of Next Gen that I think
you have to watch.
Or I'll say that I think are good litmus tests for if you'll enjoy the series. The first episode, if you only watch one episode of Next Gen, I think it would be Darmok.
Oh yeah. I mean, but that feels like an episode that transcends the series. I almost want to tell you that shouldn't count, because even if it was any other sci-fi show or a nameless sci-fi show, the writing on that specific episode, had it been any other series, even one that only lasted half a season, let's just, for the hypothetical, say that was an episode of Firefly. Right? Change the characters, but the plot's the same and the language barrier is the same. It still would have been transcendent as an episode.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that to me is like one of the top, like, just even educational television
Yeah.
episodes of television.
It also, in a selfish way, feels like a very OG episode. Specifically, like it's very, like it just feels different.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and then the other ones I have here are Q Who, which is the season 2 episode where Q introduces the Enterprise to the Borg.
Okay.
Yesterday's Enterprise, which I think is the best time travel and really just the moral dilemma that Picard is put through in that episode. And then Best of Both Worlds parts 1 and 2, and The Inner Light. And one that's not on this list, but I would say is probably one of my favorite episodes as someone for hardcore trekkers. I would say Chain of Command parts 1 and 2.
Okay.
And I could tell you my I come from a military family. My dad's a U.S. Army colonel. My brother and both of my grandfathers served. And from what they've said, the Captain Jellicoe is the best representation of a modern American military officer.
Yeah, and I guess depending on how you feel about the future, that is or isn't a good thing. You know, I mean, like, just putting it out there, right? Like, I mean, we're supposed to have evolved in a couple hundred years, Ed. It shouldn't be the same.
It's very funny to see a lot of creative types, you know, or there are half the audience think that he's being really mean and unreasonable to Riker. And then other people are like, Riker's being a total jerk because he's not doing his job.
Yeah.
Jellicoe's giving him orders and he's supposed to do them. You question him, he tells you no. All right, fine. Let's get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
that and also what Picard goes through in that episode, and that really demonstrates how scary the Cardassians are.
Yeah, it's probably the only time, right? Like it's the threats in this show, in Next Gen, only feel like threats on paper for some reason. Like that's
okay. This is a part we're gonna have a hard disagree, but give your views first. I want you to put that out first.
It's just that the best way to describe it is there's some military conflict within like the Cardassians or the Romulans come back and certain Klingon factions, but like those with a history of violence against the Federation, you can point and be like, oh, this is some shit went down, right? And the Borg eventually feels like a threat, but I don't know, like the Cardassians always felt like it was like that we talk about them in hushed tones, maybe people will be scared of them, right? Like like I never saw, like I guess my point is they talked the game like that's the bad guys, but I never saw it, right? Like there was some fear in a few episodes, but the same could be said of the Romulans or the Klingons. So what, just it never felt real to me.
Okay, well, one thing you got to remember, this is from 87 to 94.
Yes.
So this is really the end of the Cold War.
Yep.
So, and also we've established that Klingons and the Federation have found a peace, have found a type of peace or alliance in this world. So the threats that are showing up, and I mean, this might seem reductive, but if you look at the classic series, Klingons were meant to be imperialists who were just sort of trying to take over different worlds just to say they had this big giant thing,
yep.
Just to, establish dominance, whereas the Federation was more about bringing people together and keeping cultural identity, and Romulans were, very much mysterious sort of red Chinese communists, where they wanted to have everything clouded in mystery, and you had all of this infighting and stuff happening behind the scenes that you didn't know about. Whereas the original villains that Roddenberry envisioned were the Ferengi, and the problem is he wanted to make them capitalists to show how in the future that process doesn't work, but it kind of went too far and made them too goofy looking.
I feel like
to the point where they weren't taken as seriously.
No,
and
not only were they not taken seriously, like I expect I'll see more of them in other series because, like,
you will,
like,
but they take on a very different role.
Okay, because like I think they feature in like maybe 5 episodes. Like it's just they're so it's almost again I say this coming from a place of ignorance really because it's only been Next Gen and I haven't watched the other series, but like it feels like they were throwaways. Like exactly like you're saying, like, oh, these are capitalists. Oh, we went too far. Okay, let's not do that again.
Yeah. Well, they took a step back and they really retooled them in the future series.
Okay.
And as far as the Borg are technocrats who believe that technology is going to fulfill us, and they know better than everybody else.
But still, okay, I mean, it's a good primer on everybody except the Cardassians.
And the Cardassians are fascists.
It doesn't feel like I don't
who want to impose their will.
Am I going to get more from other series?
I'm biting my tongue because when you watch Deep Space Nine, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
All right.
They play a much bigger part in Deep Space Nine.
Now,
it's the kind of thing where like they believe in oppressive domination, and they're not hiding it.
So I guess the question is, and I'm not asking for spoilers, but I am asking, I guess, just because I'm curious, the Ferengi and the Cardassians, they play bigger roles in other series. How much of an overlap was there as far as that kind of stuff between like the latter seasons of Next Gen and the early seasons of Deep Space Nine?
Sure. So Deep Space Nine premiered in the middle of season 6 of Next Gen, in the January of that year.
Okay.
So you had a season and a half. So basically a 2-season overlap.
So it's not great, but they could put things like the Ferengi on a shelf and retool them for later.
Yes.
They had that time, basically.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
I guess the other question is, did they know, due to the success of Next Gen, that they were going to get 7 seasons out of Deep Space Nine? And then Voyager overlaps with Deep Space Nine. Like, did they know?
The short answer is...
I mean, I guess the real question is, was Next Gen successful enough? I mean, it must have been successful enough to launch these spin-offs.
So Next Gen was successful enough to launch a spin-off.
Okay.
And basically, after Deep Space Nine got off the ground, because remember, Next Generation and Deep Space Nine both aired in first-run syndication.
Okay.
So they would be in New York. They were on Channel 11 Sunday nights, but Voyager was part of the launch of the UPN network.
Okay.
So basically, once Deep Space Nine got off the ground, Paramount decided they wanted to create the 5th or 6th network. I forget if they came before or after WB. And that they wanted a Star Trek series to anchor that.
Okay.
And that's what Voyager was developed as.
But that's only because of the success of Next Gen, which then helped launch Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a domino effect there.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think once they decided that Voyager was gonna be a thing, they figured that Next Gen was probably gonna wrap up after 7 or 8 seasons. So they wrapped it up after 7, and then the following January, Voyager's first season happened when coincided with the launch of UPN.
Okay. And
so
was there always going to be movies? Like, because that's the other question, right? Like, I understand the formula of the original series, and it was off the air for so long in the animated series, and we talked a bit about that in the other episode, but, like, you knew, as Roddenberry was fighting that he was going to get, Captain Kirk back. But, like, when...
Yeah, I don't know if it was the plan from the beginning, but it was a natural progression that by the early 90s, the original crew were A, getting old, and 2, getting expensive.
Okay.
And and they felt that, Rick Berman, who was basically had taken over for Roddenberry when Next Gen started, and after, Gene Roddenberry passed away in 1991, right after Star Trek VI.
Because there's an in memoriam not only on that movie, but within the show, Next Gen as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so he felt that the Next Gen cast was strong enough that they could take over as a movie franchise, and he proved right, and that was proved right.
Yeah.
I believe that at one time there was a plan to do TV movies for Deep Space Nine, but by that point, TV movies stopped being profitable.
That's fair.
That's why they never really.
Is that what we should call?
The UPN had collapsed soon after that.
Is that what we should call, like, direct to streaming movies now? They're the TV movies of today. Is that?
I mean, that's what Steven Spielberg would like to think.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of the movies, the first one is Generations.
A hot mess.
And it's a crossover, basically.
Yes.
It's, I mean, for some reason, it feels like, and obviously I'm a little bit removed from my review. I've had a little bit more time to breathe with it. It feels like a cinematic franchise baton passing that doesn't need to happen, but it does.
Yes. Yeah. It's the kind of thing that, people with the true trekkers, the true believers really kind of hem and haw and stamp their feet about. But, executives are like, no, we need to explain this. Just for it to make sense in our head so that we can think that the audience understands it. They need to pass. And plus also, it's the kind of thing where for, 7 years, since Next Gen had launched, you had conventions, and like we talk about comic conventions.
Yeah, I know.
Being prevalent, like there were Star Trek conventions at least once a month somewhere around the country or the world. Like there were just as many standalone Star Trek conventions as there are big comic conventions now. They were all over the place.
And they would all fight about who the better captain was.
Yeah, they were. I mean, there's actually a great scene in Night Court, where they have a dispute between TOS fans and TNG fans.
I feel like you've sent this to me. I think I've seen it.
Yeah, okay. I have.
All right.
I have. And basically, it came over a fact of which captain was violating the Prime Directive more often.
Okay. I mean, I will say I like them both on screen. The script was selfishly Shatner oriented, but I feel like he knew it was his end. As far as
and a great send off. He kept trying to come back after that. And you're like, no.
and then like, so Generations is good. Like I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I loved First Contact.
Yes. First Contact to me is far and away the best of the movies. It's the most commercial. I think it stands alone. It's the one movie that I think is enjoyable whether you're a Star Trek fan or not.
Yeah, I could see that because it does so much heavy lifting with the story itself that you don't need the 7 seasons and movie that came before it to understand what's going on.
But also it really is a great culmination for Picard's character arc of having to finally come to terms with what the Borg put him through, and he really didn't get that. He gets that final face-off that you didn't really get in TNG.
Yeah,
because whenever they re-encountered the Borg, it was always an offshoot. He never came face to face with them again until First Contact.
Also, it's the first time they seem scary to me. I guess
yes.
It's probably the only budgetary nitpick I'll make of the entire Next Gen television series is they did the Borg so dirty on television because they never seemed like a serious threat despite everything until First Contact.
Well, I think maybe that might have just been because, to be honest, the first image I remember seeing on a television screen was Locutus, and 3-year-old Ed was scared shitless.
But he's recovered, right? You've recovered? You're better now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm better now.
Okay.
But it's the kind of thing, like, as an idea, they are frightening. And you're right. The makeup effects finally, fully realized that danger.
Also, Cochran. Oh. What a
performance. Oh yeah, James Cromwell's great.
Cromwell it steals that movie. Which is hard to do, but
I actually think that movie contains the only scene in which Deanna Troi is ever funny. When she's drunk, when Riker finds her drunk in the bar with
Cromwell.
With Cochran.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah, and then so at this point, occasionally guests or like people I'm just talking to, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going to watch Insurrection next. And everybody says I'm sorry. And I didn't find Insurrection that bad. I kind of enjoyed
it.
I don't why? What is this? Cuz I thought that while there are some moments, but it felt like straight up a very good 2-parter from the television series, which I kind of enjoyed. And I don't mind, I guess I don't mind seeing that as part of a big movie.
It's very the transition from First Contact to Insurrection reminds me very much of what happened to Star Trek V coming off of Star Trek IV, where it was Star Trek IV was a big relatable comedy. It was the most financially successful of the original series movies. And they were expecting 5 to be that big windfall, and Shatner's in the director's chair, and it's just okay. And it is kind of, it's just kind of an extended episode of the original series.
Would people prefer Insurrection had it been a two? Like, would people talk about the great 2-parter of Insurrection 1 and 2 in like season 5 if it had been that instead of on?
I think so. I think because people were expecting,
bigger than First Contact.
The big, rollicking action of First Contact, and Insurrection is a more cerebral story.
Yeah.
That it didn't get as many, it to me, it's the kind of thing where it's like, if you're going to do a movie, if you're going to put this in theaters, it's got to be big. And Insurrection didn't really elevate to that level where it's like, what about this story needs to be told on the big screen? And I don't think it quite delivered there.
Okay.
And I think it was kind of just the tonal shift just wasn't quite what fans were expecting. It's not bad.
Okay.
I think it's a little slow at points. And
no, I think that's what kind of makes me think of it more as a two-parter, because like every two-parter in Star Trek so far has very much had that moment where it's like, this is a 90-minute movie, but we have to make it an hour and 48 minutes to split it within two and make it a two-part, like a full two episodes. We can't short them on an episode, and they always get a little slow somewhere.
Yeah, and it's a real shame because Jonathan Frakes directed both First Contact and Insurrection, and I feel like he should have been a bigger movie director, and he's just been sidelined to TV since then. I think he did a Nickelodeon movie that was like a Time Stoppers movie that was a flash in the pan, and then he hasn't directed any features since. And I wish that they would let that guy loose on a Marvel movie. I think, he's someone, who could be a great sci-fi action director.
Well, hold on. We're not done with the movie. There's one more movie left.
Well, yeah. Just Frakes didn't direct that one.
Okay.
So that's why I'm just talking about this specifically here.
I got you.
One other note I will have about Insurrection.
Yeah.
My mother, when I was growing up in the 90s, was a freelance proofreader. She would proofread a lot of books for Pocket Books and Penguin Books.
Okay.
She did a lot of Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew mysteries. She proofread one of the early Starfleet Academy books, a lot of Star Trek books. But one of her assignments was the novelization of Star Trek Insurrection. And I did speak to her a few hours before we recorded, just if there was any tidbits. And one thing she did remember is in the novelization, at the ending of Insurrection, where spoilers, the satellite is destroyed with Ruafo, that the novel described Picard seeing Ruafo slowly de-age as all of the energy is bursting through the satellite from an old frail man into a young child. And I guess for some reason they were not able to make that effect work properly for the series, and you did not see that in the final film. Or
they just didn't want to have anyone under the age of 15 scarred for life. Because if done well, that could be very scary.
Mm-hmm. But I think also it kind of would have been cathartic for that character.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that Fountain of Youth movies and plot lines in general never really work out.
Yeah. All right. So
and then we get Nemesis.
So why do you not like Nemesis?
I just thought that I wrote about it. I didn't think the parallel duels, so to speak, we didn't need another Data for the plot. And I felt like they really tried to shoehorn some stuff that wasn't there. I don't mind spoilers, a clone of Picard that he has to face his younger self. I thought that was fine. But it just felt like, and then we kept having a Data and another Data because why not? Let's. I thought we had been through all that with Lore. I thought we were done. And I thought we were done.
It was too much. I think part of it. It does have the action. I mean, those battle scenes.
It does have the action, but you know what else it has?
Those space battles are fantastic. I think the best dogfights since Star Trek II.
But I will say, Picard or Patrick Stewart finally gets his like Shakespearean moment. Like some of those, somebody was like, you know what? We haven't given him like a good Hamlet in a while. Like, let's give him something he can chew on.
Well, the thing that is funny watching back is that someone in 2002 thought that Tom Hardy would grow up to look like Patrick Stewart.
It's true. It's
and,
probably
in the theater. I remember looking at it like they shot this all wrong. Why is Picard's younger clone a foot and a half taller than him?
Yeah. Also, when did Picard start to lose his hair? 12? Why? Why is this younger clone have no hair?
Well, you could say he shaved his hair. He shaved his head.
Okay,
you know,
fine.
that's
fine.
an easy write-off. Plus, if he's not bald, then you don't know it's supposed to be a clone. You know, that's just aesthetically.
Okay. That's fair.
But I do part of the reason that movie was written by John Logan. Yes, that John Logan, the famous playwright and screenwriter. Who wrote by that time he'd written Any Given Sunday, but he went on to write to co-write Skyfall and Spectre, some of the best Bond movies, like one of the premier screenwriters in Hollywood today. And he was very good friends with Brent Spiner, and they insisted on killing Data, which I thought was a huge mistake. Because it felt like too much like they were trying to reflect Spock's death of Wrath of Khan, and I didn't feel like they earned it. And I think part of the compromise was if you're going to kill Data, you can't just kill him. You have to have a way for us to bring him back. And their idea for that was B4.
Yeah, I mean, I even with that, I think I wrote about it. It kind of makes it feels that way.
Yeah,
but. It's, I gotta say, for all its flaws, and there are quite a few, it's a decent send-off of this crew, especially because I'm trying to ignore the fact that I know they come back. So, like, as a send-off of this could be the last time I see this crew. Like, it's well,
yeah, and also
okay.
At that time, because Enterprise was a prequel, so this was the last we saw of this, this was the furthest we got with Star Trek.
Okay.
That was really kind of emotional for me, thinking, real, because, and why I became very upset were perturbed, I would say, as the Abrams movies and as Discovery was coming out and everything was just prequels, when the whole mission statement of the series is to boldly go forward where no one has gone
we're going to go
before.
backward. No, we're going to go backward.
We're going to boldly go to all the places we've already seen.
Yep. I don't know.
And,
I got to say, though, on a whole...
Yeah,
I enjoyed my time with Picard and crew.
Yes, yeah, and that movie's very bloated. There's the wedding scene was evidently monstrous, because like you had Will Whedon come back as Wesley Crusher and Whoopi Goldberg as Guinan, and they had whole moments in the wedding scene that are completely cut.
Is there an extended version? Is that?
I don't think there's an extended version. I think you may be able to see watch deleted scenes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't know. It was an okay send off. I think it was a nice button. I'll say that it was a true. All right, if I never see these people again, this is a decent send off. Except Data. Didn't have to kill him.
Bastard.
Yeah. No, So next up, then for me, I'm throwing away my life of adventure and traveling the galaxy for a space station.
Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Any tips there?
Well, I'm gonna say it's much darker, tonally, emotionally, but also aesthetically. The sets have dimmer lighting. They use
movie lighting. They use movie lighting.
Yeah. No, but they use natural lighting. It's meant to be a rundown station.
Okay,
where
so it's not like every time we blow up an Enterprise, we get a brand new one that's shiny and like has the brightest lights we could possibly.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to tell you, but I will say also, it's a little heavy. I was 5 years old when it came out, and it was and for 5-year-old Ed, it was a little over his head.
Okay.
And I didn't really warm up to the series until, probably late season 3 through season 4.
Okay.
When that turning point happens.
And have you rewatched it since?
I have. I have rewatched it.
Did you enjoy what you missed, I guess?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did. And there are some the first couple of seasons, it is mixed, more so I think because they're not traveling every week. It takes the writers to adjust to what kind of stories we can tell with these characters.
Okay. Yeah, it's a space station. It's not like, I mean, you can have people come visit the station, but at a certain point, it's like these 12 people on this station. Not 12. I know there's more, but
it's also the kind of thing where they're a peacekeeping force trying to be a stable presence as a planetary government is reforming after overthrowing an occupation.
Okay. I mean, I like the idea that it's going to tell me more about, I guess, the Federation, because all I know is the military might, basically, given what we've seen in everything else.
I would say one thing that Roddenberry probably would not have dared to do with the series that Deep Space Nine really tackles is issues of religion and warfare.
Okay.
Yeah,
and we're not talking about light fare. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
And sometimes, as horrible as war might seem, it can be a necessary evil.
All right. Well, I guess I'll see you.
Yeah.
On the other side of 18 seasons of television. Right? Or are we going to get together after Voyager? Like, probably.
No. We'll get together. You watch Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
That'll be heavy enough. We'll
Okay.
talk about Deep Space Nine on its own.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk again before you go to Voyager.
Okay.
'Cause I also think Deep Space Nine starts to see the shift more to serialized stories.
All right. So I'll let you get the last word on this. You've read everything, and we've had these discussions. You've read what I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to like? Where do you think right now? I haven't even watched the first episode. Where do you think I'm going to put Deep Space Nine?
I think it's a very different show.
Yep.
And I think you'll find it fits more into what you were looking for from Next Gen.
Okay. That said, this journey isn't just about my firsthand experience with all things Star Trek. It's also a window into Ed's fandom, as well as some other friends and previous guests who also happen to love Trek in its various forms. I bring this up because while you don't have to go as far as I have, there is admittedly a lot of Trek still to be consumed, I would urge you to take recommendations of shows, movies, music, or books from friends which aren't necessarily your thing, or are things you just didn't get around to. Everyone is part of some fandom or another, but the thing that makes fandoms is community. And that's really because it's a group of people who can talk about the thing that they love. And if you have friends that are a part of fandoms that you don't necessarily subscribe to, you should take a chance. Perhaps you won't like it. Perhaps you will. It's more of a spectrum than a binary, yes, I liked it, no, I didn't. But if you don't watch, read, listen, or otherwise consume the thing, you'll just never know. And if it's a recommendation from a friend, you probably like them enough to trust their judgment until you watch the thing and make the decision for yourself. At the minimum, you can lord it over your friend that they even suggested you watch that thing you didn't like and make it a fun running gag for a few months or perhaps years, depending on how much you do or don't like it. Mileage of such a gag will obviously vary. So let me know what your friends suggest, and if you don't know, maybe you should just ask. Thanks for listening to the Palmer Files, episode 131. And now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can find all related ways to contact my buddy Ed and myself in the show notes. There you can find a link to Ed's Fiverr, where he's available for voiceover work. And look, I suggest you give him some work if you're looking for voiceover work. He's the talented man, and I don't say that just because he's a friend. We've also worked together on some stuff beyond this podcast you've just heard. The music for this episode was provided by Henno Heiter. Email can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com.
Space. The final frontier.
All right, Ed, do you have one final question for me?
What did you think of arsenic and old lace?
I had a question for you, but for the listening audience, just know that Ed is the first guest to ever give me homework for the one final question. Because
I heard you on our buddy Rob's podcast, the movie Rob Minute.
Yep. Yeah.
And for It's a Wonderful Life, and it became very clear that
I have deficiencies in the 1940s as far as films go.
Yeah, but like there's certain things, there's a Jimmy Stewart starter pack, and there are certain Frank Capra films that it's just like, I don't know how you could be a human being that walks on this earth and you haven't seen some of these movies.
Okay.
So I picked one of them for you to watch.
Yes.
And so I guess my big question is, will Arsenic and Old Lace be required viewing for you every Halloween now?
Ooh. I mean, I do like it. It's got some look, my initial thought as I'm watching this film is I really need to ask Ed, like, if he was going to go crazy and think he was someone from history, who would he want to be? But I really liked it. I thought that I wasn't expecting the fourth wall breaking quite as much as you get, because you get a couple where he looks directly at the camera. He like just looks at you.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh, okay. And I love towards the end, the plot within the plot where he's describing the play as the things are happening. Like my real thought about it is they don't make media like this anymore. Like it doesn't feel like that unique of a concept. And yet I haven't seen anything like this in the last 80 years. Not really.
No.
No. And it's sad because it's almost, I don't want to, I mean, I guess I can put it on a pedestal and say that like, it's kind of like the Marx Brothers, where like the Marx Brothers, especially maybe the first 4 or 5 films, there's a joke every 30 seconds and every joke is a bomb. Like there are no throwaway jokes in like Coconuts or Duck Soup. Like they're all killers. And it feels like no one makes a comedy like that anymore. Everybody's like, here are my 100 jokes for this 100-minute movie, and 50 of them are killers and the other 50 are throwaways, but I feel like I need to keep the jokes per minute up. And it's like, we don't make movies like that anymore. And so my first thought was, this is good. Why don't we make this anymore?
Well, part of it is this, that was originally a play. In fact, part of the joke was Jonathan, the older brother who, looks like Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Was played on the Broadway stage by Boris Karloff.
Also,
in fact, they made this movie in 1940 and wouldn't let Karloff take time off from Broadway to be in the movie, and they waited 3 years before they released the movie.
So,
because for it to finish its run.
Peter Lorre.
Oh, Johnny
is something I've only seen up until this. Maybe I've seen him in bit parts here and there, but generally speaking, my experience with him is Merry Melodies.
Okay.
Because I don't know if he did his own voice, but they drew him to T in Merry Melodies. And so that was my experience with him. And so it's weird to see him not animated and not a caricature of himself.
Well, it's that face and that voice.
Yeah.
It's a very distinct character. I mean, if you really want to trip, go see one of the last movies he made in Germany, which is called M, where he plays a serial killer, a serial child murderer.
Okay.
And that is a frightening performance. But when he came to America, I mean, he was a mainstay in a lot of Bogart movies. He's in Casablanca. He's in Maltese Falcon. But just like,
yeah, I guess my question for you would be, why there are other Capra movies that I haven't seen. So what makes that one so stand out?
To me, it's the funniest.
Okay.
And I think it's the funniest. A lot of his stuff, especially like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington or Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, I feel like there's a moral that gets wrapped up in there. And Arsenic and Old Lace is just pure comedic fun. And even to the point where Cary Grant is actually not happy with his performance because he thinks it's too over the top. But I think it's perfect.
I think it's
His facial expressions are never better.
Although it took me aback. The looking down the barrel of the camera. Just, I think he only does it twice. But the fact that it happens, it's just like I expect that from Axel Foley. I don't expect that from Cary Grant, right? Like if someone, okay, that's
or even just opening the cabinet, closing it.
Yeah, it's a very good study in like simple comedy. Like it's not dumb comedy either, but it's just simple.
Well, also like the Marx Brothers movies that you were talking about before. Do you know how they?
Yeah, those were plays first. They honed their craft like on the vaudeville stages basically, and went, these are the jokes all that worked. Let's put them in a movie.
Well, also even after they'd started movies and weren't a stage act, they would take the movie out on the road before they shot it. And would plan, okay, here's where the laugh is. Here's how long we have to wait before we start the next joke.
Yeah.
And that's why those movies are really built to be watched with an audience. And no studio is going to allow you the time or the care and no director is even going to think to try to do that.
No, not anymore.
For a modern comedy.
Not anymore. So I guess the question is, who would you be? Would you want to be a former president? Charge!
I mean, Teddy Roosevelt. That's. I'd always wanted to direct a stage version of this. And Teddy is the most fun character.
I guess,
but to me, it's this movie is required viewing, and I would say every Halloween I try to watch either that or Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein, one of the two.
Okay.
You know, if you're not knee deep in an 80s slasher movie marathon.
I was always partial to doing like the Evil Dead, and then you have to mix it up. So I always threw in like Dead Alive or whatever the heck I don't remember what it was originally called, but Peter Jackson's,
Dead Alive.
No, but there was another title for it as well.
Okay.
Which I know some people know it as, but that's. You know what? I would probably add this to the crop of things. I mean, the problem with Halloween is that you could, if you wanted to. Halloween maybe even more so than Christmas, have some of the best television specials. As far as made for the holiday episodes of TV, it might be the best holiday for that kind of stuff.
Best and the worst.
Yeah.
Kiss everybody.